Symptoms of bad transmission mount and how to fix them. Have you ever been driving and suddenly felt your car shake a little too much when you hit the gas? Or maybe you heard a clunk when shifting into gear? At first you might think it's just rough roads or maybe your tires. But what if the problem is hiding deeper in your drivetrain, specifically in something you probably never think about, the transmission mount? It's one of those parts you don't notice until it fails, and when it does, it can make your car feel unsafe, uncomfortable, and downright frustrating to drive. Today, we're going to break down the symptoms of a bad transmission mount, what causes it, and most importantly, how you can fix it before it snowballs into bigger and more expensive problems. Welcome to Auto V Fix. Let's start with the basics. A transmission mount is a small but crucial component that secures your transmission to the vehicle's chassis. Its job is twofold. First, it keeps the transmission locked in its proper place so it doesn't move around under torque. Second, it absorbs and dampens vibrations from the engine and transmission, preventing them from being transferred to the rest of the car. Most mounts are made of steel with a rubber insert. That rubber is the cushion, the piece that isolates all that harsh movement so you don't feel it inside the cabin. When the rubber is in good condition, you get a smooth and quiet ride. But once it starts to crack, collapse, or break apart, the transmission is no longer held firmly in place, and the vibrations, the noises, and the jerking motions begin. Now, let's get into the real-world signs of a failing transmission mount, because this is what most drivers will notice first. Probably the most common symptom is excessive vibration. Normally, you should barely feel the transmission working, but with a worn mount, the damping is gone, and all those vibrations that were once absorbed are now sent straight through the chassis. You'll feel them in the floorboard, through the steering wheel, even in the seat. Sometimes it feels like the whole car is buzzing or shaking, especially when you accelerate hard from a stop or when you shift into gear. If the mount is badly collapsed, you may even feel it at idle, just sitting at a light. Some cars are so sensitive to vibration that the engine control module can actually detect it and trigger a check engine light. So if you feel your car trembling in ways it never used to, don't just blame the road surface, it could be your transmission mount. Along with vibrations, strange noises are another giveaway. Drivers often describe them as clunks, bangs, or loud knocks that happen when the weight of the drivetrain shifts. You'll hear them when changing from drive to reverse, when hitting the gas hard, or even when going over bumps. Think about that sound of metal shifting and then suddenly thudding back into place. That's the transmission moving around because the mount is no longer holding it securely. In worse cases, rattling noises develop because the transmission or its surrounding parts are making contact with other components they shouldn't be touching. If you hear a knock every time you shift or a bang when you accelerate, you should take that as a red flag. Now, let's talk about transmission movement, because this one you can sometimes see as well as feel. When the mount is good, the transmission should barely shift position, even under load. But with a bad mount, you may notice too much rocking motion. For example, when you accelerate from a stop, you might feel a thud as the drivetrain jerks in place. When you brake suddenly, you might feel the same thing in reverse, as if the transmission is shifting forward and back in the bay. Some people describe it as a loose or floating feeling inside the engine compartment. If you're under the hood with someone revving the engine, you might even see the transmission visibly moving more than it should. That's a sure sign the mount has failed. A bad transmission mount can also make gear shifting difficult. Since the mount holds everything in alignment, once it's worn, the transmission can sit at the wrong angle or shift out of position. This misalignment makes it harder for gears to engage smoothly. You might hear grinding noises when shifting, or even have the gear lever feel stiff and resistant. Some drivers report their transmission popping out of gear or slipping unexpectedly, which can be both dangerous and damaging. Hard shifting and gear slippage are serious issues that often tie back to a bad mount. Another problem tied to a failing transmission mount is engine misalignment. Remember, the engine and transmission are bolted together as one unit. If one end of that unit is sagging or sitting crooked because of a broken mount, the whole powertrain becomes misaligned. That misalignment doesn't just cause extra vibration. It puts stress on other mounts, hoses, and even your drive shafts and CV joints. What starts as one bad mount can quickly cause a chain reaction of other parts wearing out prematurely. That's why catching it early matters. Sometimes you don't even need to feel or hear the symptoms. You can see them. A quick visual inspection can reveal a lot. If you crawl under the car and look at the mount, you might see cracks or chunks missing from the rubber. In some cases, the rubber is completely gone, and the metal parts of the mount are touching each other. That's metal-to-metal contact, and it means the mount isn't cushioning anything anymore. The mount may look collapsed, like it's sagging into itself, or it may be pulled away from its bracket. Any visible damage or missing rubber means it's time for replacement. Another issue that can happen, especially in extreme cases, is fluid leaks. At first, that might sound strange. How could a mount cause leaks? Well, when the mount is totally broken, the transmission can move around so much that it stresses the seals on the transmission case. That flexing and shifting can cause the case to crack or the seals to fail, and suddenly you've got transmission fluid dripping under the car. If you ever see red or brown puddles beneath your car and you've also noticed clunks and vibrations, the mount could be part of the problem. So, we've covered the symptoms: vibrations, noises, movement, hard shifting, misalignment, visible damage, and even leaks. But how do you confirm that it's really the transmission mount and not something else? Diagnosis can start with a simple visual inspection. With the car safely supported on jack stands, look closely at the mounts for cracks, collapsed rubber, or contact between metal parts. Then you can do some physical tests. One method is to have someone rev the engine while you watch the mounts. If the transmission lifts or shifts excessively, that mount is weak. Another is the pry bar test, using a pry bar to gently apply pressure to the mount and see if it moves too easily. There's also the tail shaft wiggle test, where you move the rear of the transmission by hand. More than an inch of play is a bad sign. For front-wheel drive cars, you can rock the car back and forth in park and watch for excessive drivetrain movement. And then there's the torque test, where you have a helper rev the car and drive in reverse while you watch the engine heave under load. Excessive movement compared to normal means the mounts are worn out. Now let's talk about fixing the problem, because once you've confirmed the mount is bad, replacement is the only real solution. Transmission mounts can't be repaired. They have to be replaced. The process isn't overly complicated, but it does require proper tools and safety precautions. First, you need to safely raise the vehicle and support it with jack stands on solid ground. Then you support the transmission with a jack and a block of wood, just enough to take the weight off the mount. Once supported, you remove the bolts securing the mount to the transmission and to the crossmember or chassis. Sometimes skid plates or crossmembers have to come off first. With the bolts out, you gently lift the transmission with the jack, just enough to slide the old mount out. Then you slide the new mount into place, lower the transmission, and reinstall the bolts. It's important to tighten everything to the proper torque specification, because over-tightening or under-tightening can cause new problems. A torquey wrench is your friend here. After everything is secure, you lower the car, start it up, and check for improved smoothness. For DIYers, replacing a transmission mount is usually a 1 to 2 hour job. The difficulty depends on how accessible the mount is in your particular vehicle. Rear-wheel drive cars often make it easier, while some front-wheel drive cars can be more cramped. Having the right tools, jack, stands, sockets, torque wrench, is essential. Safety is also critical. Never crawl under a car supported only by a jack. Always use jack stands on solid ground. Of course, not everyone wants to do this job themselves. If you take your car to a shop, expect to pay anywhere from $200 to $600 for a transmission mount replacement, depending on your vehicle and the shop's labor rate. The part itself may cost between $50 and $200, while labor can range from $100 to $400. Some dealerships may quote even higher, especially for European models where parts and labor are pricier. On the flip side, aftermarket parts are often cheaper, and some people even upgrade to performance mounts for stiffer handling. The choice depends on whether you prioritize comfort or performance. OEM mounts focus on comfort, while aftermarket options can reduce drivetrain movement, but at the cost of more vibration in the cabin. Let's pause for a second. If you're finding this breakdown useful and you want more straightforward guides on diagnosing and fixing common car problems, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Here at AutoVFix, we're all about giving you clear, step-by-step explanations to keep your car running smooth and your repair bills under control. So go ahead, tap that like button too. It helps us out a lot. Alright, back to transmission mounts. One more thing worth mentioning is how ignoring a bad mount can lead to bigger problems. A loose transmission puts extra stress on CV joints, axle shafts, and even the drive shaft. It can cause misalignment in the drivetrain, leading to premature wear of expensive parts. It can even crack the transmission case or cause engine mounts to fail. And if you let fluid leaks go unchecked, you're risking major transmission damage, which can run into the thousands. So, replacing a mount when you first notice symptoms can save you from a much larger bill down the road. Now, let's talk about choosing the right replacement. If you're just daily driving and want comfort, stick with OEM or high-quality rubber mounts. They'll give you the smoothest ride and minimal cabin noise. If you're into performance driving or track days, you might consider stiffer polyurethane or even solid mounts. These will hold the transmission more securely, improving throttle response and handling, but they'll also transmit more vibration and noise. It really comes down to how you use your car. One important tip: if you're replacing the transmission mount, it's a good idea to check the engine mounts at the same time. They work together, and if one is worn, the others may not be far behind. Matching their stiffness and material is key to keeping the drivetrain balanced. After installing the new mount, always do a test drive. Pay attention to how the car feels when accelerating, braking, and shifting gears. The clunks and vibrations should be gone, and shifting should feel smoother. If you still notice issues, double-check that all bolts are torqued properly and that nothing else was missed. Sometimes, aftermarket parts have slight fitment differences that require minor adjustments. As for lifespan, factory mounts usually last up to 100,000 miles, but harsh driving, poor road conditions, and fluid leaks can shorten their life. Performance mounts vary depending on material and use. The important thing is to stay aware of the symptoms: shaking, noises, hard shifting, and inspect the mounts if something feels off. So to wrap it all up, transmission mounts may be small, but they're critical to your car's performance and comfort. When they wear out, you'll notice vibrations, clunks, excessive movement, shifting issues, and even leaks. Replacing them promptly restores smoothness, prevents damage to other parts, and keeps your car safe and reliable. Whether you DIY the job or take it to a shop, understanding the symptoms and fixes puts you in control and helps you avoid unnecessary costs. If you've made it this far into the video, you probably care about keeping your car in top shape. Subscribe to Auto VFix for more in-depth guides just like this. Drop a comment if you've ever replaced a transmission mount yourself, and share this video with anyone who's been complaining about strange vibrations in their car. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.